The millionaire's disabled daughter was drowning right in front of dozens of rich guests, and only the cleaning lady's black son jumped into the water. What happened after his heroic leap flipped the entire mansion upside down. Tiago Santos hit the surface of the crystal-clear pool like a thunderclap, shattering the silence that gripped the Whitmore estate that Saturday afternoon. 40 elite guests froze, watching in stunned disbelief as the 17-year-old tore through the water toward Isabella, who was sinking helplessly in her special needs float. "Somebody help!" one woman screamed, but her glittering high heels stayed glued to the marble floor, unwilling to risk a scratch. But Tiago didn't hesitate. He was the son of Dona Carmen, the maid who had cleaned the Whitmore estate for over a decade. He knew every inch of that place, and he knew 15-year-old Isabella had cerebral palsy and couldn't fight the water on her own. Her safety float had malfunctioned. Her face showed sheer terror before she slipped under. In seconds that felt like forever, Tiago reached her, ripped her free from the sinking chair, and surged back to the surface. Isabella gasped back to life, coughing violently in his arms as he swam her to the edge. Finally, a few shocked hands reached down to pull her up. Thank you." Isabella stammered through tears, clinging to Tiago's soaked arm like it was the only thing anchoring her to this world. That's when Richard Whitmore stormed out, parting the frozen crowd like a furious king. But he wasn't raging because his daughter almost died. "What the hell are you doing in the social area?" he barked at Tiago, eyes blazing. "Didn't your mother teach you your place?" Still dripping, Tiago met the millionaire's glare with quiet defiance. At 17, he already understood. Men like Richard didn't see him as a person. Even when he saved their child, he was a threat to their power. "Dad, he saved me," Isabella choked out. "Shut up, Isabella," Richard snapped. "You never should have been using that faulty equipment." He turned back to Tiago with venom. "And you? You're going to regret stepping foot where you don't belong." But Tiago didn't flinch. In his eyes, there wasn't fear. There was something far more dangerous. The calm of someone who's survived worse and has nothing left to lose. If you think this is just a story about class and race, keep watching. Because what happened next turned one act of courage into a storm of reckoning. In less than 48 hours, the Whitmore mansion went from luxury paradise to a battleground. Richard fired Dona Carmen that very day, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because her son had crossed a line. "You have 24 hours to vacate the staff quarters," Richard barked over the phone. "And make sure your brat never sets foot here again. I'm being generous not to press charges for trespassing." Isabella begged him to stop. She tried to reason, to explain, but the more she spoke, the worse he punished her. First, he took away her phone. Then he canceled her swimming therapy, the one thing that gave her freedom. Finally, he hired a full-time nurse to watch her day and night. Her mansion became a prison. "You don't understand, sweetheart," Richard said in that calm, condescending voice rich people use when they're being cruel. Boys like that save people for attention, not kindness. But Isabella remembered. She remembered Tiago sitting beside her, reading library books out loud, helping her with math, making her laugh when physical therapy broke her spirit. That boy didn't save her for praise. He did it because that's who he was. Back in their tiny rental home, Tiago's calm was unsettling. He organized his school books at the kitchen table like nothing had happened. "We'll be okay, Mom," he said, not just to comfort her, but because he believed it. Carmen watched him with a mix of fear and pride. Tiago had always been different. While other kids begged for toys, he was dismantling broken electronics just to learn. When others whined about teachers, he taught himself extra chapters. And when he faced racism, he beat it by becoming the top student in class. "Son, Richard Whitmore has power. Real power," Carmen warned. "Men like him ruin lives with a phone call." Tiago didn't argue. He just smiled. Not bitterly, but dangerously, like someone who'd just found a reason to fight. "Mom, remember what you told me about Grandpa? How he built our first house, brick by brick, even when they said a black man would never own land here." Carmen nodded, unsure where this was going. "He didn't build that house to prove he was right," Tiago said. "He built it to prove they were wrong." And then, he opened his old, half-broken laptop, the one he'd repaired from junkyard scraps, and began to type. Monday morning started like any other for Richard Whitmore, until his world collapsed before breakfast. 53 missed calls. reporters at his company gates. His wife locked the mansion doors and refused to come out. "What the hell is going on?" he barked. His lawyer, Harrison Wells, walked in looking like he'd seen a ghost. Without a word, he shut the office door and activated the soundproofing, a move reserved only for total disasters. "Richard," he said, shaking, "we have a problem. A big one." He opened a laptop and unleashed a storm of headlines. The Herald Tribune. Real estate titan used shell companies to launder millions. The Financial Times. Fraudulent government contracts tied to Whitmore Holdings. But it was the Washington Post that made Richard's face go pale. Secret recordings revealed plot to silence key witnesses. No, that's impossible," Richard stammered, scrolling frantically. "My office is secure. My phones are encrypted. My systems." Wells pointed to a highlighted quote. "They have audio, Richard. Recordings from your basement office. Conversations where you talk about how to deal with the Santos problem." Richard's stomach dropped. That office was his private bunker. Not even his wife knew it existed. Who did this?" he whispered. The answer arrived seconds later, in his inbox. A single email, from an address that made his blood freeze. "Investigate Kyoto Whitmore at gmail.com. The sender? Just 2 letters. T.S. Mr. Whitmore. For 6 weeks, I've documented every one of your crimes using public records, exposed vulnerabilities in your own systems, and testimony from people you dismissed as nobodies. Your shell companies? Mapped. Your fake contracts? Uncovered. Your threats to my family? Recorded. Your neglect of your own daughter? Captured. You said people like me were predictable. You were right. I predicted every step you'd take once your pride was challenged. But here's the difference. You use your power to crush lives. I use my intelligence to protect them. P.S. The federal authorities have had everything for 20 minutes. Your bank accounts are frozen. Sincerely, Tiago Santos, the boy you never saw coming." Richard read the message 3 times, his hands trembling. A 17-year-old just detonated the empire he built over decades. This can't be real," he muttered, logging into his banking app. "Access denied. Access denied. Access denied." "Richard," Wells said softly, "there's more. They have video of you threatening the Santos family from the day you fired them. There were no cameras." Richard snapped. He was right, there weren't. But what he didn't know was that Isabella had recorded the entire thing through Rose's phone, on an open call to Tiago. Every word, every threat, captured. Then came the final blow. Richard's phone rang. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Special Agent Victoria Torres with the FBI. We have a warrant for search and seizure of all your properties. You are required to appear immediately." Wells leaned in, whispering, "They're already at the mansion. Social services are interviewing Isabella about abuse and neglect." The man who once bragged about putting that family in their place was now watching his own world burn, lit by every cruel word he thought no one heard. Across the city, in a small apartment, Tiago sat beside his mother, calmly watching it unfold on the news. Carmen wiped tears from her cheeks, not from sadness, but from pride. "Son, how did you do this?" she whispered. Tiago smiled. "You always said knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you." Richard forgot that intelligence doesn't care about race, wealth, or zip codes. He saw a poor black kid from the slums. He didn't see a programmer, a strategist, someone who turns pain into purpose. Then the phone rang again. This time, it was Professor Janet. "Tiago, Harvard, MIT, and Stanford are fighting to offer you full scholarships." Minutes later, Marcus Chun, the civil rights lawyer, arrived. "Isabella's guardianship has been transferred," he said. "She requested to keep studying with you." At that moment, with sirens echoing across the city, Carmen looked at her son and realized something. He didn't just bring down a monster. He rewrote the rules. Richard Whitmore, once untouchable, was sentenced to 215 years in federal prison. His accounts? Seized. His homes? Auctioned. His name? Erased. His own wife divorced him before trial. His elite friends? Silent. Ashamed. In a note found hidden in his cell, Richard had written, "I underestimated that boy. I thought money could crush anyone. I never imagined he'd use my own arrogance as the weapon to destroy me. He built my downfall brick by brick." And the most brutal twist? Now locked in a cell, Richard shared space with the very people he spent a lifetime looking down on, and they treated him with more dignity than he ever gave anyone. Tiago? He walked the halls of Harvard University on a full scholarship. Double major, computer science and digital law. A degree created just for him. "Mom, check this out," he said over lunch, showing her his phone. The headline read, "Former tycoon Richard Whitmore sentenced to 215 years. But Carmen wasn't focused on revenge. She was focused on her son, the boy who once took apart an old radio to learn how it worked. "I didn't understand it then," she whispered. "But you always saw what others couldn't." Tiago's story became a national movement. Documentaries, interviews, a best-selling book. Isabella, now living with a loving adoptive family, became a rising voice for disability rights. "Tiago taught me something," she said in a school speech. "Being underestimated is our greatest weapon. While they laugh, we build." Across the country, companies changed hiring policies. Schools added new courses on unconscious bias. Young people from low-income areas chased dreams they'd once buried. Richard Whitmore tried to teach Tiago his place. Tiago responded by teaching the entire world that no one defines your place but you. Firecracker final lesson: arrogance destroys the arrogant. Intelligence, used with purpose, builds legacies. Tiago didn't just beat a billionaire. He proved that real power doesn't come from wealth. It comes from knowing who you are and never letting them silence it. Sometimes, the best revenge is becoming everything they said you could never be. Have you ever been underestimated just because of where you come from? Or judged before they even knew your name? Drop a comment below. Tell us your story. And if you believe that intelligence and courage can shatter even the biggest empires, then hit that subscribe button. Because here, we share stories that prove it's not where you start, it's how far you're willing to go.